Handshakers is about two kids who get superpowers when they hold hands. If you had a childhood even close to mine, that makes you think of one thing.
Wonder Twin powers, activate! Shape up and ego! Form of water!
But we're not that lucky. The show is a loosely defined series of conflicts between rival pairs of handshakers who are all competing to meet God and have their wish granted? It's all kind of vague, and the show does an incredibly poor job of explaining anything, but I think that's basically what's going on. For a show with this much exposition, it's all really useless. The protagonist is constantly asking everyone in sight to explain any of this, and they just keep repeating the same uninformative sentences at him. What's going on? You're a handshaker. What does that mean? We must fight because we're handshakers. I think 40% of the dialogue in this show is the words handshakers. They keep trying to imply a level of grandeur to being a handshaker, but that's impossible because they seem determined to keep us from knowing anything about it that'd make any sense or convince us to care at all. The worst part is the fact that this show revolves around fights that seem to have no stakes whatsoever. Handshakers fight in a Doctor Strange mirror dimension where nobody else can see them or get hurt, and any lethal blow just results in them losing their powers, meaning that you never have to fight again. Their injuries even go away once they come back to the real world. There seems to be no downside to losing except that you won't get the chance to have your wish granted, but we don't have any idea what that means, so who could care? The main characters don't help matters because they're tailor-made to not have anything riding on any of these fights. We're told that the reason handshakers fight at all is to get their wish granted, but neither Tazuna or Kaori have expressed actually wanting anything. He completely lacks any understanding of what's even going on, and she barely registers as a living human being, to the point that I don't actually know if she's a real person or not. The closest thing we get to a motivation for our two main characters to participate in the main conflict of the show is this nebulous assertion that Kaori will die if Tazuna lets go of her hand. Why? What'll cause that to happen? All we're told is that she's special. I think they tried to imply that if Tazuna takes a dive to get out of this, she'll die anyway, but they were extra vague about that detail. I'm just sort of assuming that's what I'm meant to think, because it's the only thing that could possibly explain how any of this is happening. Tazuna himself actually isn't that bad of a protagonist. He feels more like a person than we tend to get in these battle-centric shows. He's level-headed and kind of likable, and we're introduced to him via his main flaw. He can't turn someone down when they need him to fix something, and will do it at the expense of his own time and ability to eat. His desire to fix things may have something to do with his sister dying at a young age, which is also the source of his desire to help Kaori. Add to it the fact that he recognizes this whole handshaker thing as the BS it is, and immediately decides to just throw his next match, and we've got a protagonist I can get behind. But he won't, because of Kaori. Kaori, as I said before, might as well be a framed photograph Tazuna carries around. She shows no emotion whatsoever, she doesn't communicate. We don't know a single thing about her, what she thinks, wants, fears, or why she's even in this story, other than as an excuse to keep Tazuna involved. The one and only defining trait they give her is to allow Tazuna to access his powers, which means she's the key that starts the car, not the passenger that takes the journey with him. But Kaori's portrayal as a doll with no agency is indicative of this show's larger and more problematic use of women in general. The use of sexuality in the show is absurd. The first fight they have is against a pair of chain-wielding handshakers who access their powers by the guy throwing this woman on the ground and stomping on her until she orgasms chains at the enemy. It's almost enough to get you to forget about how this girl is constantly bouncing all over the place, or the fact that we get a 4-minute scene of Kaori and Tazuna taking a bath together. The elephant in the room with this show is its visuals. I'm not against an anime using computer generated animation, whether it's to subtly accent a more traditional looking show or to go all in on creating a unique look all its own. But this is extreme. It's like they just dumped every effect they could think of onto the screen. I don't remember the last time I saw so many fisheye lenses. This show is the extreme opposite of a show that has to take shortcuts to compensate for a low budget. They had too much that they could do, and then just did all of it. Some of it looks genuinely beautiful, but it bounces back and forth between the good stuff and the supremely ugly stuff so rapidly and so often that I just don't like looking at this show at all. The first 3.5 minutes of Handshakers tell you exactly what this show is in the worst way possible, and it's nothing I ever want to see again. If you haven't watched this show, don't bother. It isn't worth anyone's time. The one and only good thing I have to say about Handshakers is that we finally have the perfect example of how, despite what many fans think, a big budget does not equal a better looking final product. What is the worst anime you've seen recently? Tell me about it in the comments below, and then watch these videos about way better shows. Thank you as always for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.